Happy to see you all here with us today. We're just absolutely thrilled to have these wonderful alumni talk about their experiences as artists, experiences as they were student artists, what has happened between the time they had commencement to the present. You'll hear their stories. We're very grateful to have Nicole Spiegel-Gotsch, who's going to introduce the panelists and have them answer and respond to some questions. We'll have an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end of their talk. And they also have a wonderful opportunity in the springtime that they're going to tell you about that you might be able to get involved with to really engage further with these artists. So without further ado, Nicole, take it away.
Hi. Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Nicole Spiegel-Gotsch. I'm your moderator. I graduated Purchase in 1999 with a lit degree after spending some time both as a visual arts student and a BA LA student. My twisty career path eventually led me to start my own business that I had for 13 years. It was a one-woman creative shop. Last year, I closed the door on that to start a new business called Maven, marketing consulting for women business owners and entrepreneurs. I'm joined today by a superstar panel to talk with you about what it takes to succeed as an artist today. And with that, I'll let them introduce themselves. Lisanne, you want to start?
Hello, my name is Lisanne Moline. I am joining you from the UK right now. I am class of 2016 Playwriting and Screenwriting. I am also CEO and president and a transmedia producer of Winter Triangle Entertainment in Manhattan. I started my career really from the grounds of Purchase. And from there, I went on for my master's in international film business with London Film School and University of Exeter. And now I'm wrapping up my PhD here in the UK. My focus is new media and transmedia, and I'm excited to be here with all of you and share my stories on the trenches in and outside of the United States.
Thank you, Lisanne. Roxanna?
Hi, everybody. I am Roxanna Lewis, and I'm really excited to be here with all of you. Thank you for taking the time out of your life and your day to come join us. And we're a very warm and informal community here in the sense that we're really interested in who you are. I'm talking about you before I'm talking about myself to let you know that we really want you to participate and we really want to hear from you. We really want your feedback. We really want your questions. We are literally here for you. So on that note, I will just say that I graduated Purchase in '90 from the Dance Conservatory. I considered myself a barefoot modern dancer. I had a career as a barefoot modern dancer and as a choreographer, which was really my day job. I'm very fortunate that dance actually paid my bills, but I definitely didn't have really an idea of how to step out of Purchase and how to step into the working world. I had a stab at a professional career as an actress and was very fortunate that as a choreographer, it took me into film and television pretty much through the side door, working on set. Two women, one was a director, producer with CNN, and the other was a producer really who did music videos and commercials at the time. And they really took me under their wing in an informal mentorship because there was really no such thing as mentorships at that point. And I learned about production and producing, directing on set with no pedigree in it whatsoever, other than serious drive and hoofing it and talking my way into positions. I took a little hiatus and raised a family. I'm raising a family. I have a son who's going to be going into college in 2 years. And I think about him taking this, that you all are here and participating in what can we offer you all. I now have all of that is to say that it rounds up with me as a founder and CEO of my own production company, Roxanna Productions. And I now am a film director, writer, producer, and work with national and international co-productions. So my journey is crazy, and I kind of don't mind holding that up to let you know that you are not alone and we're here with you. So I'm going to pass this on to whoever would like to say hi next.
Holly, do you wanna, I don't think anything can top that, Roxanne. That was just such a fun ride listening to it. But Holly, you wanna tell us a little bit about you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't think I can top Roxanne. That was amazing. Hi, my name is Holly Sachs. I graduated from Purchase in 2004 with a degree in journalism and a minor in Asian studies. I'm one of those people who came to Purchase with absolutely no clue what I wanted to do. I was always studying music, but I did not get into the conservatory. I was waitlisted. So I went in as an undeclared major with no clue what to do. So I decided to take classes in everything. And so, like Nicole and a lot of the other women on this panel, I have a very twisty career path. When I was in college, I started teaching private music lessons, and that became a career. So that was my first business, which I still do today. So I still have students all across the tri-state area. But that wasn't enough. So I ended up getting my degree in education so I can teach orchestra and music in the schools. And that still wasn't enough. So I started another business in editorial because, as I said, my degree was in journalism. So I did a lot of freelance writing on the side and a lot of freelance editing. So now I've launched about a few years ago an editorial business where I edit mostly dissertations and technical study, technical journals and papers, and a few fiction novels. And then I decided to get my doctorate in educational leadership and started another business about 2 years ago with my cousin called Flourishing Professional, where we help people navigate the working and professional worlds. So basically we help people answer the, well, what do I want to do and how do I make transitions between different fields of study and fields of work. So like a lot of the women here, I'm very, have a very twisty path, and I still have all three of my businesses are still in existence. So I always work for myself.
Thank you, Holly.
You're welcome.
Three business. I can't even keep up with you all. All right. So Doliah, do you wanna tell us about you?
Hi, my name is Doliah Francis. I graduated from Purchase in 2019. I finished in the winter of 2018, but technically 2019 class. I got my degree in painting and drawing, and I got a minor in art history. And so my perspective of things is more kind of those beginning years post-college and what you do with all of the creative knowledge, you know, once you're out the nests, I guess. And so, you know, just to give a little background like everyone else, yeah, I grew up in the creative fields and constantly kind of exploring the creative energies of life. And after getting my degree, I did some freelance work, and I also worked in galleries down in the city. And I had some shows in Chelsea and the Lower East Side, and that was great. But you know, it's funny listening to everybody else here on this panel, because they're talking about how windy and twisty their path has been. And it definitely makes me feel better when I see my past or my path doing the twists and turns. And so, you know, after doing some things in the city and with the art world, to give it a big umbrella, I kind of decided to backtrack a little bit because I've always had a really deep love and connection and drew a lot of inspiration from nature and environmentalism. And I went back and started studying and got certification as an herbalist. And I started getting involved in environmental fields. And I now work at a park preserve up in the northern Hudson Valley region. And I recently, last year, opened my own herbal wellness business. and, you know, giving the good medicine to the people, all that good stuff. And I still have artist commissions going on, but you know, it's been interesting seeing those twists and turns of how you take your own artistic creative energy and how that can morph, and how, you know, to me, I feel like I'm still living a very artistic and creative life, but it just it's taking on different forms. And so I'm excited to be here and kind of talk with people from different walks of life, and especially people who might be at Purchase right now or freshly coming out of Purchase, and kind of, you know, talking about the different changes that go on, and the, you know, metamorphosis that can happen, and how it's okay, you know, that happens. So thank you everyone for being here. I'm super excited for it.
Thank you, Doliah. I love this idea of metamorphosis and blending, how creativity can blend and manifest in different ways, right? It doesn't always have to be one way that it's manifesting in your career or in one place, right? So we do have another panelist who's going to be arriving later, Pietro Rotondo. I'm going to do, just to let you know, he's from CBS and he will be joining us a little later. For now, we're going to move on in his absence. But when he arrives, he'll be able to tell you a little bit about himself too. So the seeds of this presentation, or this event rather, came out of this idea that we were batting around, which is this idea that to succeed as an artist today almost requires artists to become creative entrepreneurs. Now that can be, it's, you know, it's debatable, it's an opinion, but it does seem to be out there in the ether. And even as we're all talking, right, about how we all sort of transitioned, or as Doliah put it, had a metamorphosis into something else, right? So there's that idea there. And the question becomes, what does that mean? And where do you start? So I came across this conversation. There's a lot, this is an ongoing conversation. It's not new. If any of you are familiar with Richard Florida, The Rise of the Creative Class, that was published in around 2002. This idea has been talked about a lot. You know, if you do a Google search on artist entrepreneurs, you'll find a huge range of opinions. Yes, no, maybe so. So when I saw this conversation last week posted, I instantly thought of us. And the question it poses is, are content creators considered entrepreneurs? And the reason this caught my eye for a couple of reasons. One is because nowadays, artists are often content creators, and people often equate the two terms as being synonymous, even though there are differences. So that's one reason it caught my eye. The other reason is that this, you know, you could put the word artist in here. This question has been posed about artists. Are artists entrepreneurs? And I pulled out some of the things that came out of this in the comments section, and a little thing that was happening on Twitter too. Overall, there were a couple of themes that emerged in this online conversation that people thought were the differentiators between artist versus entrepreneur. Innovation, monetization, and treating what you're doing as a business. So those were the three things that were hit on consistently. So with that, I thought to myself that there's actually more than that potentially that we could include or extrapolate, building blocks, if you will, that get us to that place of innovation or monetization or treating stuff as a business. And those building blocks, in my opinion, or some of them, are self-identity, branding, especially, and for artists, your portfolio, right? Networking, your professional reputation or professionalism, and how you present, right? So writing, presenting, speaking. With that in mind, those are just some thoughts that I had. I would love to open it up to the panel and go from there. What's your idea of a creative entrepreneur? What comes to your mind? And And I'll start with maybe Holly this time, since we go in a different order. Keep you guessing.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute my my video. Sorry about that. I actually think that you touched on something I've been thinking about a lot about entrepreneurship, because as you know, I'm an entrepreneur and an artist. There's always been like a dichotomy between, I think like the business world and the art world. And I actually think that they need to be fused in order to be successful. So I believe that a creative entrepreneur is someone who can use the creativity and the open-mindedness that you get from being an artist and able to solve and bring that to the business solutions. I think the best business leaders are super creative and can do both.
Interesting. Roxanna, what do you think? What do you think of when you think creative entrepreneur?
I really appreciate what Holly said there. I think this has been really an interesting process for me as we've discussed these in our meeting, this kind of topic in our meetings and so on. And it's made me look back on myself and my own journey. And to answer your question, I mean, I think that a creative entrepreneur, I used to take offense at the word entrepreneur. I have to tell you, I was like, for sure, hands down, I am an artist, which means, and I was thinking about it, I was like, what did I identify with? I was really thinking like in dance companies, the dance company doesn't have money, so they're not going to be able to pay the dancers well. So we shouldn't be asking, there's no union in dance companies or anything like that. So really where was my sense of anything other than how do I show up to whatever audition happens to be going on, and hope for something more than at that time, probably like if you were lucky, $10 an hour. It was like a gift to be getting health insurance. And so for me, I had a lot of blocks. I thought, well, to be an artist, especially in my education at that time at Purchase, we weren't taught at all about, and certainly for dance, about business. We weren't taught about aspects of how to really think outside of the extraordinary training that we received to go audition and to get a job somewhere. I believe that a creative entrepreneur definitely is somebody who intentionally activates the business component in their creative work, and who really owns the power of their intellectual property. So instead of just saying to oneself, and whatever background anybody might be here, if you are in a fine arts or not, like, you have these wonderful ideas and your ideas count. They have value to them, and somebody's willing to pay for them. Somebody's willing to give them away for free in a cool conversation. And somebody's also willing to make a business off of this sticky note, or, the earrings I have on, or like somebody had a brilliant creative idea, or the tea that Doliah sells. Like, these are creative ideas. The thing that makes it beyond a gift is someone put a value to it, a monetary value to it, of time and of energy. And I think a creative entrepreneur embraces that concept and really does the homework that's necessary to try to figure out how to make that into a viable, sustainable income.
I'm so glad we're recording this, because these answers are phenomenal. Lisanne, what are your thoughts?
Hi. Well, this is a very interesting discussion. And, thinking about the 3 points that you had brought out, Nicole, about innovation, monetization, and then, the business practice, thinking about what order does that come in?
Yeah.
And, I would have to say, from my own experience and what I'm observing from my colleagues and my community, is it starts with an authentic self. Everything starts from that place. And until you really know what you're about and the things that drive you and what you're passionate about, the rest of it falls in line from there, because that innovation, that creativity comes from the fact that you're looking inward into the things that really inspire you, the things that you say, hey, I can see myself doing this the rest of my life, or I can see myself doing this for quite some time, because in this point in my life, I really like this place and I would love to engage with this. And then from there, by being genuine and authentic about what you like and don't like and what you're about, your own personal identity and branding, then the innovation comes out. Then you start thinking about, wow, I really like this. And what would I do with that? And then it starts to build. And as you start going into that place, and it starts to evolve into the monetization part of, would other people be interested in it? Or how would I make a living at this? What would that look like? And then as that starts to unpack itself, then you start to think about a business plan. And that business plan is really your professional practice and your discipline. And but from my experience of my own twisted branching journey, it all came from being authentic to myself and realizing what was working, what wasn't, what I thought I liked and I didn't, and not being afraid to make a change. And instead of pursuing something maybe because I had a stake in it, and many times, there's commitments you have, either financial commitments, or you put money into something and you thought this was right for you, or it's what you wanted to do, and then you realize it's not. And then what do? Do you keep pushing forward or keep putting money into the into the plan that isn't what the path you really want to go in, because, well, I put so much time and energy already. Now what? Like I just need to finish it. Well, maybe sometimes finishing it is being honest with yourself that it's best that you step away and do something else. And I remember a friend of mine, he had gone the path of medicine, and I remember when he finished medical school and he was getting ready to do his residency, and he decided to take a year off. And this was way before the pandemic. And he said, I'm gonna take a year and travel the world. And I remember him telling me, and we had this conversation, who's already a doctor by this point. He said, my mom said, why are you doing that? You're going to be behind. And he said, I told my mom, behind who? And she couldn't answer me. So he said, look, Mom, I know once I go into medicine, I'm going to be working for the rest of my life in medicine, and I'm never going to have this chance. And so she agreed, and he went, and sure enough, he's been a doctor and practicing for years now. And he looks back and said, I'm glad I took that time for myself. He was being true to his own path in his identity. And it didn't change the direction that he wanted to go in as a doctor, but there was something else he wanted to do also. And he embraced that, and he was honest with himself. And it wasn't that he felt that he was missing out on something. He embraced it. And I've had other colleagues too, that through the pandemic, very affluent producers turn around and say, hey, I'm going to go get my master's in marine biology. It's like, what? I'm not leaving the business. Like, I've always loved it, and I want to do it. And actually, I just ended up seeing her a couple of days ago. And so it's about that authenticity, in my opinion. And I think that once you're true and authentic to yourself, and you have a community that can help you get there too, that's really important, that you can have those honest discussions in that safe space, and be open about it.
That I love this idea of starting with your authentic self, and that even that is a journey in and of itself. Doliah, do you want to weigh in here on what your idea of a creative entrepreneur is?
Yeah, I mean, I love and agree with everything that's been said so far. I agree, especially with what Roxanna was saying before, where it's like bringing a practical business sense into your creative work. And it's funny that you said that, because when I had been, thinking about this topic, I almost saw it in the opposite way of bringing creativity into your business. And it's like Lisanne was saying, where you're asking yourself these questions of, okay, I'm passionate about this. I can really see myself devoting a lot of my time, energy, life to this thing. How do I do that? And I think when you decide to kind of build your own path, because I think if you are in a creative field, you consider yourself a creative individual, the chances are you're probably not going down the beaten path. You're probably not doing the typical status quo. And so it's very much like you need to kind of lay your own stones here. And you have to use your own creative savvy sort of mind. I think Nicole also mentioned this, of utilizing that intellectual aspect of yourself to apply it into, how do I really make a practical life out of this? And so I think that, whether it's bringing a practical business mind into your work, or bringing your creative problem solving intellectual mind into your business, they're kind of one and the same. So I really consider a creative entrepreneur as somebody who knows that they are going to kind of have to carve their own path, and they are solving those, they're approaching those hurdles on that path in creative, maybe atypical ways. And I think that's really how somebody can become very successful. Like Roxanna was saying when she was speaking about herself, that there were times when she didn't really have too much experience or background, but you kind of creatively, with like charisma or this or that, like, were able to make it happen. And I think that's oftentimes what we really have to do, is get creative with it while also being grounded in viewing this as a business, which I know many artists don't like to do that. It doesn't come naturally to the free spirits that we are, but all the same, it definitely, you need the groundedness, but you also need that creativity when approaching each hurdle.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to sort of sum it up. I like this phrase, you need to lay your own stones, right? That's such a powerful visual of what we're doing when we're following our paths. So defining one thing that everyone sort of touched on in one way or another, especially Lisanne when she was talking about our authentic selves and being true to that and understanding that, was defining yourself as an artist, and how that almost seems central to this process. Like, so how, panelists, how have you navigated that process? Did you sort of know who you were as an artist from the beginning? Was that something that developed over time? And how did it influence your brand development, so to speak, if it did? Let's see who wants to go. Doliah, you want to go first with that one?
Sure, I'm all warmed up.
Exactly. Both boards are all good and ready to go.
It's funny when you were saying you liked what I said about laying your own stones. Yesterday, I was building this sustainable hiking trail up this mountain, and it was quite literally what we were doing, and my body hurts. So I'm like, definitely gain inspiration from that. When it comes to defining myself as an artist, I don't think that this is abnormal, but I at least have identified as an artist most of my life, just because been doing creative things, drawing with crayons since I was very small. And you kind of, when I look at the the label of artist. It's sort of like, well, I like to do these things that are expressions of inner creativity. And usually, I see people going that way, but I kind of want to explore this way. And what people tend to call that in our society is artists. So I think with my relationship with kind of the identity of artist, it's sort of like the label that's given to those who are very exploratory in life. And I know I've said this a couple times, but don't necessarily go with the status quo of things. And so that being said, I feel like artist is kind of the label for sort of just an inner energy, an inner authentic self, in which I've just always lived my life. And, now I'm in the mountains practicing as an herbalist, and that's definitely not societally normative. And so I feel like, how it's influenced my creative career, it's sort of like at the core of the energy itself of how things have developed is very much in the spirit of what would be called an artist,
So I think that's it. I like this. I see an opportunity for a little contrast here, because I'm going to jump to you, Roxanna, because Doliah is talking about something that was sort of it wasn't a difficult revelation the way she's talking about it. It was an easy fit. It's like, yep, that's me. But when you, Roxanna, were talking about an entrepreneur, and you're like, oh, I don't want to be that. So maybe you want to speak to this a little bit, and how that tension resolved itself, right?
Ooh, that's such a good way to put it. The tension resolved itself. That's so neat. It's so neat. Yeah, as I'm listening to Doliah, I'm like, wow, there's just such clarity and like just wisdom, and it's really lovely to soak in. And I was thinking, God, am I going to tell the truth when she asks my question?
Nobody's listening, right? It's just
nobody's listening. I always, the word artist for me, that's absolutely how I just identified off the grid. My whole family was, everybody was extremely creative and made their primary work something that would fall into a fine art category. And they were quite rebellious in that way, but I didn't see it that way. I thought that was really, really, really normal. And I was actually very confused. I had very alternative lifestyles and education growing up. And I honestly didn't understand trends. I couldn't stand trends. I had no respect. I was just not interested in being part of thinking like other people thought, because it was the thing that you were supposed to do. And it's really interesting because my work now it's going to probably come up in our topics later, but the things that are really coming to me in my business are all based on things that were very organic, talking about Lisanne's initial point that I created years ago when it wasn't a trend, when it wasn't a fad, when it was so outside the box that people didn't really know what to do with it. And now it's something that society has it falls into topics that society is really embracing, thank God. But in terms of identity as an artist, I think it took a lot for me to switch gears and wrap my head around the concept of, I kind of grew up with like this whole Isadora Duncan idea of doing it because you love to do it and share it with the people who you share it with. And I do believe that creativity is infinite for everybody. But it's definitely in my more recent years that I've grown to embrace the power of being a creator and what the difference is between being an artist, what my definition was between being an artist and a creator. And someone said to me, well, you're a creator. And I thought, God, that's narcissistic and egotistical. And I thought, well, I could identify with it because I was a mom. And I thought, well, that's true. I did create that. And then I started really relating that to the work that I'd put into the world. And then I started understanding the relationship of all these other aspects that we are going to take it back to the reason we're all here is what we're bringing out in our this internship, this bridging the gap internship. And so it's very very personal to me to explore these areas and to share this with you all as a team and to share it with any participants, because I think that no matter where you are in your life, these are questions that are really important to get answered as truthfully for oneself as possible. And I think it's really important to be honest. And like, it's weird. I have this costume that I was born in that looks like one thing, and people make assumptions, and the same with everybody else who's here. And so how do we, if we're aware of that, how do we navigate the world with that? And how do we take our passion and our inner self and these things? And I think ultimately, be able to stand on your own 2 feet and make decisions for yourself. And how do you want to put that into the world?
So I see that was wonderfully put. I love this. I think it's very common what you were saying about how you put all these things in place very organically early on, and somehow society has caught up, right? I think, or some of these things are now being embraced or thought of as trends that when you were doing them, they weren't even on the radar, let's say, or they weren't necessarily embraced. So I think that that's really interesting, and it's a common scenario for artists and creative people, right? The world isn't always necessarily ready for what you're doing, and maybe by the time it catches up, you're already over it. Or maybe not, maybe then you have a chance to revisit it. I see that Pietro has joined us. Hi, Pietro. Pietro, I'm so glad that we have you here. We were talking about how defining yourself as an artist seems central to getting from a place of just doing your artwork to perhaps being a creative entrepreneur. As long as you're here, would you like to take a few minutes to just introduce yourself, or maybe talk about how defining yourself as an artist has played into your career path?
Well, I'm Pietro Rotondo, and I've been an alumni since I don't know when, but it's been a long time. What can I tell you is that the experiences that I've gone through since college, actually throughout college and after college, have now morphed into something different. I never saw myself as an artist until I began to create stuff. And sometimes just sometimes you don't even know what you notice until later on, to people point it out to you, and then you start to learn about yourself more as you experience more in life. My experience has been very harsh. It hasn't been easy. Back then in the 80s and the 90s, there was a different kind of style that was going on that I had to deal with, in many aspects, which I don't know how to put into words, but that pain and that trying to live every day, moving forward ahead, morphed me into something different. And the one thing as an artist that I found out is that I had to learn about myself first. And as soon as I was able to see who I was inside, I was able to express everything and make it into an art form. That's creating television, photography, organizing events. But I always put my touch in everything I did. You know, it's a very I could be talking to you guys for a couple of days on this, but just for now, I think I'll stop right there. I don't know if that answers your question or if that give you a little insight about me, but there's a lot of stuff that I could talk, and the more I hear you guys, the more I'll come out, and they become anecdotes usually nowadays. Every time I say something, it's like, hey, I remember when I remember when I did this. And then I realized, wow, that was a long time ago. Oh, wait, I did that too. Oh, and it just keeps happening, and like it never ends. And then I look at my resume, and my resume is huge. I'm like, I don't remember doing all that, but I know how to do all that. And it's just something that the life experiences will just teach you to deal with. Something that eventually will come into focus as you grow more within the inner self, and especially have an open mind. That's very important as an artist, is to have an open mind uh, to go into different aspects and situations that you're going to find yourself into. I hope that makes sense.
That makes total sense, Pietro. I think this idea of there being sort of not just one reference point, but many. You know, you were talking about that sort of initial reference point of knowing yourself, but then later the accumulation of your experience and all these little pit stops along the way that become other reference points for who you are and how you're defining your outline or your constellation, right? And I also like the way you were talking about how everything that you do has this touch that you're putting to it. You're bringing yourself to every, even events, whatever you're doing, you know, not just what would typically be considered an expression, an artistic expression, but anything that you're involved in, that you're infusing yourself, your artistic qualities into that. Lisanne, what are your thoughts? Would you like to add anything here?
Sure. It's a very interesting conversation, defining an artist. I was thinking as I'm listening to everyone, there was quite a few years ago, I was down in the city with a group of actors and the casting director. And it was shortly after the Sandy Hook tragedy up in Connecticut. And it was on everybody's mind. And he said, and he had a grandchild in the school. And he said, you know, the world needs artists more than ever, because artists help people to make sense of the world. And that always stuck with me, because now here we are with all these things that have happened, and global tragedies and things that we would never imagine we would be dealing with. But it comes back to our contribution as artists. What are we? It's not just about what we have to say, but why does it need to be said, and how is that helping the betterment of mankind, global societies, thinking holistically, being diverse, being inclusive? What are we contributing to humanity? And so when I think of artistry, it's in the vein of our contribution to a better society. And that can come in the STEM fields, which have embraced art in there with science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So I think that when we start to think about our contribution as artists, we start to think about what impact are we making. And that's really been a strong compass for me when I decide on whatever I'm going to do, is really understanding why am I doing it, and why is it important to do, and how is that going to impact others. So that's my space of my artistic identity, my DNA.
This is really amazing. I see that I want to leave enough time for the audience to ask questions at the end. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and go towards the end. If there were one piece of advice you could give your younger selves, what would it be? And Holly, maybe you want to take this one.
Well, it's interesting. I think that if I could tell my younger self, it's don't be afraid to take a risk and fail. My life has been obviously twisty. I've had great success, but I've also had great failure. As I said, the whole thing with Purchase, I didn't make the conservatory, but I ended up with a degree in journalism. I didn't even realize I had a talent for writing and editing until I gave a different half a chance. Plus, you never quite know where you're going to land up and where the pieces of your life are going to end up becoming a tapestry. When I was in Purchase, I never dreamed that my degree in journalism, especially when I decided not to work in the field and decided to become a teacher, would come back and play a role later on in my life. When I was in my doctorate, that's when my training and all the lessons and all the classes I took in Purchase really became relevant and really pushed me ahead in terms of success. So what I thought was, a disappointment back when I was like, in my earlier 20s ended up being a great success, and it actually forms a great foundation for what I'm doing now. So you never quite know. And also the lessons I learned from both being successful and especially from failure has helped me grow tremendously as a person. We talk about artists. I realized listening to everyone else answer that my jobs, my businesses are a little bit different in the fact that my jobs are actually designed to support artists. Both of my siblings are what you would call, they are visual and performing artists. And I was always the person who would cheer them on the loudest at concerts because I'm not very good at dance, and I can barely draw a stick figure. And I realized that even though I was not an artist in this typical sense, and my careers reflect the fact that I support artists on their path. As an editor, I support writers. As a music teacher, I support young musicians as they go on their path. And so I realized that if you decide that, maybe your artistic help can actually help push other artists, and I do think that other artists need to help other artists, even if it's in a quiet way of like, hey, your work is awesome, and being the loudest cheering section in the front row. So if I could tell my younger self piece of advice, it would be not to be afraid to fail, but also don't be afraid to cheer loudly for your friends and peers in the art field, because we all need we can all need cheerleaders as going through this very tough time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to second that. Doliah, what do you? Well, you are your younger self, but even your younger self than this.
Right. Well, I love everything that Holly said. This was mentioned briefly before, but community in general, going through different, just getting through life and feeling okay. Community is so important. And that, becomes more and more clear, I feel like, just just through every trial. So I agree with what Holly said. I think that the piece of advice similar to Holly's answer would be to just be compassionate towards yourself, and in the sense of allow yourself to change, allow yourself to switch paths. I know Lisanne said this earlier, where sometimes we're afraid to switch paths because of different pressures, or, but I've spent so much time devoting it to this area, and, or a fear of failure. But I remember I had a moment with myself where I kind of, felt that tension and felt that hesitancy to kind of shift gears. And I kind of realized, if you ask anybody, any person who's 80 years old, let's say, and we said, did you think that you would end up where you did? I have never, ever, ever met somebody who said, yes, absolutely. And it always, everyone's path twists and turns. And I think that being very accepting of that, especially speaking to my generation, or, you know, people in their 20s and younger, where there's this pressure to know what you want to do by the time you're like 15. So that you can start preparing for college, so you know which colleges you want to apply to, know which major you're going in for, and know what you're going to do after college. It's like such a pressure for such young kids to, it feels like at the time that you really need to have your whole life figured out, and you spend the rest of your high school and college career building on this life plan. And when the school system ends and the life plan starts to wobble, and you're like, I got the job, but I'm not super resonant with it, it's a bit of an identity crisis for many young people, to have to change this thing that they maybe have been identifying with for like over 8 years, you know? And so I would say my advice is to, like that, there's no such thing as a life plan. There's planning ahead, there's having goals and aspirations, but there's no such thing as this is it. And to be very compassionate and kind to yourself when you want to shift, and it's totally okay to shift. Everybody does. And as long as it's in alignment with, again, the theme, I feel like today is your authentic self, then you'll look back and say, like Pietro was saying, like, oh, I did that and that and that and that. And it all kind of weaves together into this quilt that just makes sense to who you are. So that's my advice to me.
That permission, that compassion, that allowance, the space for change, and to sort of leave what doesn't serve you anymore behind is really fantastic. And I think that that's powerful. Even if you're older, you can go through that identity crisis, right? You know, oh, I spent 20 years in this career and I'm sick of it. I want to do something new, right? So Roxanna, what would you tell that barefoot modern dancer?
I really value listening to everybody, what everyone is sharing here. I really do. For me personally, my advice to my younger self would be to value my worth, to just really value my worth. And I share that. It's a bit of a piggyback with, I think Lisanne just talked about, you know, why am I doing this, and what is it putting into the world? And for me, those were really easy answers. I really understood that from a very young age, but I didn't value my worth in that process. So for anybody out there who can relate to that, I encourage you to value your worth. And it is true, I came at this as a creative entrepreneur. And so I had to come at things backward and believe that the time is worth it to learn about the industries that sort of support you in your endeavors, so that you're acknowledging some of the rules of the game, so you know what's going on, and you can engage confidently, and you can put whatever your definition of a price tag is. It's not even a word I like to use, but you can put your worth into the world with confidence.
Excellent. Lisanne, what do you think? What would you tell your younger self?
I would tell my younger self, don't jump your line, not somebody else's, but your line. And springboarding of what Doliah was talking about giving yourself space, you really need to hold the reins. Sometimes we can feel pressured that or overly anxious to get ahead or to move ahead, or as I mentioned earlier, be behind or catch up thinking we're behind when we're not. We're pacing how we're meant to pace organically, what we're meant to embrace, and that takes time. I mean, really thinking about who you are, you need to give yourself that safe space and permission, and be gentle with yourself, because if you're not, then we end up jumping our own line. And when that happens, we're taking on things that we think we're ready for, but we're not, or it's the wrong things that really aren't what we thought it was going to be. So that's what I would tell myself. Don't jump my line.
I like that. Pietro, what do you think? One piece of advice would you give your younger self?
Just to be more, stop talking too much, I would say, to myself. It's okay to act like you know everything, but hold back a little bit, listen more. And that's something I used to do, is talk a little too much, and then the people trying to talk to me will eventually tell me, stop, now hear me out, and then I will listen. And I think that if I would have done a lot more of that, things would have been, I don't know, in a different situation. But I eventually learned to do that, and the more I listened, the more I was able to create, turn their experience into my own experience. I'll take their stories and I'll internally make them into something that I want to do, and I'll put it back out in my own way. And that, it just took me far. And so as a kid, I would say to myself, hey, listen first and then talk. And that was something I would say. That's one of the many things I would tell myself.
I love that. I think listening is one of the most underrated skills, and I am with you. It's one that I'm working on all the time. So I'm wondering if there's time for one more question, or if we should jump to Q&A with the audience. Jeff, Wendy, thoughts?
If we keep the question to about maybe 15 minutes or so, that'll give us the last 15 minutes for Q&A, if that's all right.
Okay, great. So for the last question, it's a little bit less esoteric. It's more sort of what we got here. What sort of changes or trends are happening in your industry right now that you think people should be aware of? Yes, or someone just starting out rather should be aware of. So who wants to take this first? Maybe Holly, do you want to take this? Maybe music or whatever you like?
Sure. I think just in general, because my background crosses many fields, and I'm probably going to answer this a bit from an academic side, and I apologize. I am at heart an academic as well. So I think that one of the big trends I'm seeing in the literature, in all the peer review articles, and just across not just education, but also seems to be in artistry and in business, maybe not so much in artistry, but like in business, and based on the papers I've been reading, is mentorship really seems to be a really big trend, where someone more experienced will help someone starting out. And I think that's the fundamental reason behind, one of the reasons for the internship that we've created is for that, to help more experienced people reach out to help younger students. So don't be afraid, if you're starting out, to reach out to someone more experienced, because I do know that that's a big trend, at least in the literature and in all the technical journals I've been reading. So
excellent.
Don't be afraid to ask.
Doliah, what do you think? Are there any sort of trends or things that you've noticed in your field, or stuff that you think is important for people just starting out to be aware of?
Yeah, so to speak, to my more artistic background and working with galleries and, curators and such like that, I would say a big trend, I agree, is mentorship and being kind of in these, because artists, especially visual artists, which is more closely my background, it's really helpful to continue to have groups of people who can critique your work and to have that mentorship. And so I would say joining like crit clubs, and which are very, very popular now, and having that kind of networking in those interpersonal relationships to kind of really help bring you and familiarize yourself with the scene is really helpful. And this is like a side, more technical kind of thing, but speaking very specifically to visual art, I'm not sure how much that might apply to who's here right now, but having being very tech savvy and being versatile with your artwork, being able to do like digital illustration, being able to do some graphic design, being able to, morph your, like I'm originally an abstract painter, but have I done graphic design? Have I done some media marketing? Have I done illustration? Yes, absolutely. And sometimes it's just that skill that helps you get your foot in the door. And so I would say, as like advice, if you're going into that field, to really try to push yourself in your different skill set, kind of, because that can be really helpful when it comes to networking, or just kind of wiggling your way in there.
Great. Lisanne, are you noticing any trends in your field that you think we should be paying attention to?
That I am. I am seeing a definite convergence of the humanities fields with digital technologies and the sciences. And I'm seeing that not just here in the States, but also in Europe as well. So they're looking at a lot more global collaborations, because you don't have to be in the same room. You can be hiring people. In fact, they talked a lot about this, about working with Americans in Europe and so forth. And you're just completely working over the computer, but there is that potential. But some of the areas thinking about is that are growing is AI, machine learning. These are all areas that you don't have to be a tech savvy person. What they're looking for are people who have backgrounds in psychology, sociology, narrative storytelling, sciences. These are all transferable skills, assets, and education. So don't think that there's maybe a job title and that removes you from the equation. They're actually looking at forming teams of collaborators of those different fields. So that's where that global collaboration comes in. And also just be open to the fact that what we identify with in our own skill sets may be named something different. So recently I was talking to somebody, and they were studying actually at the university. And I said, well, what are you studying? They said, human geography. I was like, human geography? But that's our sociology, okay? And so when we think about this, just think wide open. Be open to the fact that what we're studying may be called something different somewhere else, but it is a transferable skill. And also the simplest things of these apps that are on your telephone, many times companies, they're run by people who are older and don't know those applications. So to know those apps, or to know email, Excel, I should say, but not well, yeah, email too. They do ask that. But to know those apps on the phone, because they assume that if you're a younger generation, you automatically know it, because they don't. So they want to rely on you to be able to navigate those things. So the simple things that we take for granted, that we have all these apps on our telephone, the people that are hiring generally don't use those. They defer to other people. So having those things listed on your resume, and brushing up on those skills and keeping current, because there's always new softwares, or as Doliah was talking about with digital and working with different apps and technologies in our own creative practice. You need to constantly keep up with that, whether it's reading trades, or just make it a regular routine of each week, just making sure you take in something about your industry, something you're passionate about, see what's going on, and that'll kind of help you also to stay in the game.
Great. Roxanna?
I think Lisanne hit on so many important things. I'm going to just touch on a few of them. I was thinking about in the world of sort of film and perhaps TV also, but I think augmented reality is something, in variations of augmented reality in all its forms, is something that's very much coming into a trend. I kind of want to talk about that trend thing again. As we move forward into higher technological skill levels all around the world, I want to say a few things. Number one is that we need to be even more human beings. The human parts of ourselves must come out. Companies are looking for that. They want to know who you are, what makes you you. Kind of this balance of amazing technical intelligence and curiosity, but also we need these human stories. We need human connection. We need it grounded in our ability to relate thoughtfully together. And the other thing I'm going to say that's sort of a piggyback on what Lisanne said was that there are multiple generations in the workplace now. And so some industries that are that used to be maybe extremely youth driven, or they seem to be, I'm just going to say out loud, be careful, because we're going to work together. Generations are going to work together. And we want to be careful to really embrace, you know, what somebody is just coming out of college and their expertise, but what is that person, who is that person that's meeting you who's a bit older, but there's a desire and a need for us to work together, and to be careful to not tell yourself, oh, they're going to age out, they're old, they're going to lose, the trend is going to move on, they're going to be wiped out. No, what we're going to do is we're going to work together. and I just encourage to have that open mind, in the way that there used to be like kind of a perfect haircut or a perfect suit, and you needed to show up, I don't know, I'm making it up, but like with loafers or whatever people were expected to wear. And now it's like, you know, be you. Now it's really, who are you? What is your being bringing to a project or to a company? And I think that curiosity is a trend that will never, ever, 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 ever go away.
I like this idea of how all these boundaries and lines are sort of being blurred or disappearing and changing. And if you think about who's best positioned to navigate that, it would seem as though artists and creative people are. I'm just going to put that plug in for all the creatives out there. Pietro, what sort of changes or trends are you seeing in your field that you think people just coming into it should be aware of?
Totally be computer savvy. Computers are definitely taking over. They're not longer, computers are like your friend, and if you want to make him your friend. And I was a computer savvy from the beginning, but now I need to find everything that's going on, because like you guys said earlier, it keeps me in touch with the next generation. The next generation, all they know is about computers. I was there before the computers were around, and now that they're around, I have to communicate to them by working with them. And lately, I've been working with a lot of young kids who are totally computer savvy. But because of my experiences, that together with the savviness of my knowledge in computers makes us work together more freely. We're able to experiment a little more together. We're able to create together. And that knowledge is really interesting how it's working out. The fact that I know that I can find the picture of an old man in the cloud, and the young kid knows exactly what I'm talking about, where to find it, how to bring it down, and I know how to fix that picture to make it look better, and she knows how to deal with it and how to put it out faster, and we collaborate in such a way. But everything is based on computer, internet, Wi-Fi, everything you can possibly imagine is all computer based. Anything I do nowadays for work, everything's going to a cloud now. I cannot lose any data anymore, because everything I do is going somewhere. So it's very good to be aware of your computer skills. Don't be afraid of it if you're older. It takes time to learn it, but once you do, it's really cool. And that's one thing I noticed in my business, is that everything is computer related, and everything's going there. I mean, I'm working from home. I could be working down in somewhere in upstate Connecticut or somewhere in upstate New York, and have the same result if I was working in the city. And and that again takes collaboration on both sides. So it's both of us need to know the knowledge of the computer. If one of us lacks that knowledge, we get lost. So yeah, I would say that be computer savvy. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If you don't know, just ask. Everybody's willing to learn because it's new. So everybody's willing to teach you, you know, and sometimes even they don't know. You know, a lot of my bosses don't even know where we're going. A lot of times they make up as we go, you know, so and it works.
Definitely. I like this idea of technology and the computer. It's not just a skill, right? You're talking about it as enabling and fostering collaboration, multi-generational, over space, you know, over geographical, whatever, but that you're able to collaborate more effectively and efficiently if you're both coming to the table with a
It's a
certain,
tool.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
become a tool. It's no
Exactly.
longer, it's become a hammer, it's become a nail, it's become a saw, it's something now that we need to have. It's no longer something we can't avoid. It's going to be here and it's going to get more in depth. And we have to just learn to accept it and be very smart how we go about it too. Because even though it's a great tool in the real, in the good, you know, in a perfect world, we also have those people that try to make it bad. So we have to be smart, you know, how to approach this.
So we got some really, I don't know about what you guys think, but that was, I think we have so many insights and takeaways from this panel. It's pretty unbelievable what has come out here in such a short time. And so with that, I am going to give it to the audience for Q&A. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask the panelists?